what I'm going to do is that one of the panelists has in fact prepared a very short and what she calls a start statement. And I want to begin with her so that that might in a way set the platform, as it were, for further discussion. And after that, I'm going to call upon Honey just to say a couple of words about the film. Now, I know some of you will be thinking that it's better to call Honey first because we just saw the film, but I think let's hear the start statement first to see what happens. So, Suresh, will you begin?
I first have to start with saying that I think my start statement is going to be it's not a start statement, it's a story that I wrote from the ground from long, long ago. And but before that, Honey, thank you so much for bringing the Singapore scene in. Having worked directly with traffic women in Singapore, and I still continue to, I have to say, even after 15 years, I still get these bouts of depression every time I go back home after talking to a victim of trafficking. The sheer exploitation, the sheer confusion, and the conflict within is something that brings conflict within myself too. And I have stalwarts here, Selima, Khalida, all of them, and they've seen it and told it too. It is very depressing. Out of the 3 million that are, close to 3 million that are trafficked, I've been, I would say, lucky to meet about a few hundred in all these years, and the stories are the same. But the story that I'm going to share today is not about a woman that's been trafficked. It's about a boy I met about 15 years ago. And the topic today and his story, I think, tie in very closely. Yours truly was right out of social work school and working in a red light district, working with peer education and the youth in that area to talk about trafficking and how the youth themselves, who were children of victims of trafficking at times, could stop or do something about the whole issue of trafficking in that city that I was working in. It was a small, dingy classroom that I would go into for a 3-month period. And I remember Amal. Amal used to be a backbencher. He used to be sitting right at the corner. From the day I started my focus group discussions and talking about what were the plans and how we could go about it, the whole body language of Amal was one of mockery. He had that look about him which said, okay, what are you talking about, woman? And I decided to ignore it and keep going on with the classes, not trying to see what was wrong with him, but more curious about what was happening. Now, what really happened, to cut a long story short, after about 3 weeks of that whole mocking body language that I would see, Amal moved forward. He was sitting in the second row, and he was paying attention to what the process of the classes were all about. Now, of course, the curious cat in me had to know what was happening. Why was he moving? Slowly, what I also started to see is Amal was one of the first boys to come into class. If I started the workshops at 5:30, Amal would be there by 5 p.m. Now, one of the days I decided to be brave enough and go a little earlier to catch him and to ask him what was happening. When I did, of course, I started off on a much softer note, talking about films and Bollywood and what he liked and disliked. After which I said, well, I have 2 questions for you. He said, I will. Shoot. So I said, why was it that you would sit at the back of the classroom and mock me all through my session? That's when he said, well, let me ask you a question. Imagine yourself from the time you are born and from the time after when you feel and you know what's happening around you. Your nights are spent sleeping below the same bed on which your mother has customers one after the other. You're controlling your breathing because she shouldn't lose her client knowing that the baby is below the bed. You grow up, you go to school. You go to a normal school, but after a few years, when the people come to know that you come from the red light district, you are asked to leave because you are a bad influence on the people around you. So you go to a school run by an NGO. The quality of education may not be that great, but you go through school, you still don't lose hope, and you go to college. You go to college, but you're refused admission because your mother is a prostitute. And you come back and you tell yourself then that you're going to give up. You only belong to that red light district where you are accepted. The rest of the world doesn't accept you. So you get into everything else that happens in the red light district. You notice it. You do notice that women your age, your mother's friends, all of them, most of them have been trafficked, but you don't do anything about it because at least when they come into the train, they're safe there. Now you, Miss Shreya, you come from the same world that ostracized me. How did you expect me to greet you? With open arms? For me, that was a shock. Of course, here we were talking about what to do from a completely outsider's view. We were not even looking at acceptance. That's when I asked the second question. And I said, well, yeah, I haven't even got 10% of your experience. And here I'm talking to you about how to lead your life and how to talk about trafficking and anti-trafficking measures. So why did you move? Why did you move from that last bench to today on the first bench? What happened? He said, well, I saw that you do have something that we can do. What you say does make sense, and we can participate in the process. I decided to give you a chance. And that is what I guess we are talking about here. We are talking about leadership and change in policies, and talking about policies right from the lowest rung. We have to get more inclusive. We have to look at the conflicts from their needs. A lot of times what we do, and that's where I guess the greatest challenge of participative leadership is we look at their needs from our needs perspective. We need to be much more inclusive about the people, the very traffic victims also, who are right there, and include them in the decision-making process. It's not easy. A lot of the girls I meet here, a lot from India and Bangladesh, they scare me by saying that when they go back, they're going to commit suicide. They cannot go back and save their families. They cannot go back into that circle of poverty because a lot of them don't even, as the film also said, $20 to $25 is what they are charged. $20 for the service, $5 for the hotel room. And still they don't get to keep any of that money. The pimps are hard to catch. The traffickers themselves are their own people from their nationality who work here, who have SIM cards that are changed every 1 week. How do you track them? So we have to look at a more inclusive process, and that's where I guess we can aim at some success. Definitely. Thank you.
That's right. Honey?
First and foremost, before we start, could I actually get Halija, Rachel, Salima, Jason, and Roland to actually just stand up, please? Could you please give a round of applause to this thank you so much for your time, the research and the materials that you have actually shared with all of us. I think as someone who is in communication, my strength is, really in putting the messages together and how it's going to be disseminated to a wider audience. We can actually do it through talks, we can actually do it through video, but why I choose this medium is because, Pia is there, so hi Pia. Okay, so basically, I feel at the end of the day when my students, right, when you tell them, okay, let's attend this human trafficking talk, they would rather go to a concert, but if I tell them that, hey, there's a screening of a short film, it sort of pulls the crowd. In the last, screening session, we had about 100 SMU students, along with other NGO people who attended. So I think it's actually a good move. And when they attend such events, they actually came to me after the screening and they say that they didn't know that, because we are such a modern city, and they don't know that, the issues are that, pressing. And it's happening right at our own backyard. Say, for example, the forest brothel situation. Some of them say that, oh, this is actually a few years ago, it was in the papers. But I did my further research. I spoke to even taxi drivers and asked them, have you actually heard of this forest brothel, or if men wanted to look for like, a quick sex, where do they go? They actually said that they share their experience where they have sent passengers to Kaki Bukit, dormitories where these forest workers are working. And that's where, all these girls with short miniskirts go to. And he said, I was driving and it was in a dark forested area. What would a girl in miniskirt be doing? And there's like groups of guys standing all around. So I think, it's high time, like what, Khadija Salima has mentioned. We have to actually be very honest in our discussion, and we should not just brush this whole thing under the carpet by saying, that human trafficking, by arguing with definitions, because the problem actually exists. And in my first short film, Innocence, it's more on child prostitution. And in that particular short film, I started the film with, that CBD area. And why I had that time lapse at the start of the film is to show that, in juxtaposition of that, skyscrapers, we have, the red light districts where, women are dehumanized, forest brothels, things like that. And I think there is also this issue of shifting goalposts, where it is not only about physical space, that, not only from Geylang to, forest brothel, but it has also moved into cyberspace. And that's what, a speaker was mentioning, it becomes a lot more difficult to track, and it goes along of, not just the people who manage the website, but people who are, managing the whole, rental of the house for the tax, things like that. So, I think recently the government have also, caught about a school principal and senior civil servants, about 80 of them actually, who is involved in this like online trafficking thing. But they have actually yet to like disclose any names. We will not know whether the names will eventually get disclosed. So at the end of the day, just my last point would be the sophistication, of this human trafficking and sex exploitation. It has gone far and beyond what we used to say. People go to Geylang to look for such things. There is in Eastern Europe, for example, right? They actually attended a school, like a high school, and they come in with full equipment, videos, and they say that they are from modeling agencies in the US. So, they ask all these high school girls, you bring us your passport, we'll bring you there, you'll become supermodels, like, Heidi Klum and all that stuff. And these girls, being young and impressionable, they actually surrendered their passport, went to the US, and the next thing they are being trafficked. So, and I think it is, the onus is on us, whether you are a parent, whether you're an NGO, whether you're a teacher, I think at the end of the day, you have to actually inform the kids, that such issues are actually happening. And to just also do my closing, this is also based on my personal experience. Sometime about last year, I actually received like a Facebook private message, from someone in the US. I don't think even the picture was of the real person, but it was actually a guy, like looking, in a jacket, like pretty decent and all that. So he actually wrote and said that, hi, can I actually, make friends with you? So of course I said like, I actually don't accept, people who are, I don't know personally. Then he responded, the following day, saying that actually, I saw your profile picture and, I've never actually felt so attracted and in love, blah, blah, blah. And the message continued for several paragraphs, describing that, he wants to have a future, a marriage, this and that. And if, let's say, I'm agreeable, he will be able to send an etiquette so that he can meet me, so I can go up to the States to meet him. I still have the email evidence. And before I could actually press the report button on Facebook, okay, he was already gone. Like, he got offline the next day. So in other words, I think he must have sent it to like many women, and other women might have already like reported it to Facebook. So at the end of the day, so we all have to like note that now they've actually moved to all these other social platforms. So thank you.
Thanks, Anita. The situation gets worse and worse as the months go by. Emily has been working similar sort of areas, right? I mean, can you share with me your experience?
Hello? Sorry. I've been working in grassroots NGOs for about 10 years, and at the moment I'm working at United Nations with the Agency Project on Trafficking with horror. So I'm working in Beijing at the moment, and it's interesting getting a different perspective working with governments and other agencies, as opposed to working on the ground with all the survivors. Did you have a question?
Yeah, don't share your story with the African girl, Sierra Leone, yeah?
I've been working with an NGO called One Girl. Last year I presented on this organisation who help girls in Sierra Leone in really rural communities. They've all been trafficked, mostly to their families or friends' houses in the city to go to school. But they tell their families they've gone to school, but actually they're usually domestic workers or prostitutes or doing all sorts of things. It's not really, they're not identified either as traffic victims, especially in Sierra Leone, where there's many other issues after the civil war, a lot of child soldiers and things like that as well. But there's a lot of preventative programs at the moment working to educate young girls. One initiative that we've been working with One Girl on is a social enterprise teaching girls to make eco-friendly sanitary pads. They're teaching the women how to make it and then sell them in communities at an affordable rate. This is one reason why they're not going to schools from age 10 years old and onwards. There's no toilets in the schools, they've got no way to manage the food, and also there's a lot of stigma attached to this. So this is doing really well, and the women love it.
Yeah. Thanks, Evelyn. When I first put Datin Marina on the panel, she responded by saying, I don't even understand why I'm on this panel. And I have been keeping her in suspense up to a point, but thank you, Marina, for at least agreeing to be on the panel. And Marina, by the way, has a plane to catch, so we have to be fairly succinct. The reason why I have you here, Marina, is you've been in the broad field of philanthropy, working for causes of the oppressed, repressed, suppressed for so many years. What do you think in all of this, and seeing the films just now and hearing our three ladies here talk about this situation, what is your spontaneous response to this in terms of what people like you and I and all of us can do to at least try a little bit to reduce this horror around us?
Because I was so worried about this panel. Thinking and thinking about it, and somewhere in the deep recesses of my mind, I realized that I have done a little bit on it, not completely know about all this. In 2009, at the second last Asia Pacific AIDS conference in Bali, just preceding it, there was something called the Women's Court. And I was one of the jury members of that court, and the theme was trafficking of women. And all day, from morning until evening, we heard testimonies from various women from all over, from Indonesia, from Cambodia, from the Philippines, I forget where else, about what they had been through. And some of the stories are beyond horrific. And it really woke me up to the issue and woke a lot of people up. As you know, I was working 12 years in HIV, and suddenly the issue of trafficking came up a lot, although it wasn't put in quite the same way. We had a lot of issues of families giving away their daughters, ostensibly for jobs. In the North Thailand, young girls very, very poor families, and people come and offer them jobs in Bangkok, and girls go off and then find themselves in the sex trade. So they go off at 16, and they're back at 19, HIV positive. And we've had all sorts of issues like that with a lot of migrant workers. For me, I think, besides the law, and I think in the past few years, human trafficking has become a big thing, partly I think because the US has been pushing this a good deal. I'm not sure in the beginning that the right approach was there, the Bush years, it was all about rescuing women and, raiding the brothels and getting the women out and then really not doing much for them. Then the women are back in the trade as soon as they're released and all that sort of thing, so didn't do much. But now I see country by country they are enacting laws against trafficking, and Malaysia is included in that. 2007 we passed the Anti-Trafficking Persons Act, and that's just come into effect. But I think the law is one thing, and the law can also be problematic. As you've seen here, it's about trying to, get at these people, and then treating them as offenders, as someone said just now, rather than as victims, and trying to put in place every component in the whole chain to make sure that these women are correctly treated all the way, and then given the opportunity is important. But I think it's also important to educate the public, because you always need the public support to do this. And I think very often this is where it fails, because you see the police doing something and you think, something's happening. But the way it is seen, like in Malaysia in the media, you see pictures constantly of raids on nightclubs, and you see all these pictures of girls squatting down and like this, and it's like a big triumph. The police have all these foreign workers who are sex workers and all that, but nowhere in there is there anything at all that says that if women are being forced into this work, they're trafficked into this work. It's all these bad women who come into our country and work as sex workers. The other thing about it is that in Malaysia in the past few years there was this issue of China dolls, and the media was using this term China dolls all the time. And these are women from China who come in and come in sometimes as students and things like that, and then supposedly wind up stealing the husbands of locals. And we actually had the women's wing of the main Chinese political party taking this up as a campaign of getting rid of China dolls. And it never seemed to have occurred to them. And it, to me, was illustrative of so many things. One was the completely lack of awareness that these girls were victims. Because you keep finding them in chicken farms, not anywhere luxurious, hardly where they've been set up, in nice homes or anything. That was one. And the other thing was that all the blame was put on these China dolls and nothing on the men, which tells you a lot about the gender relations between these women and their men. So they can't blame the men, you have to blame the China dolls. And it gets to quite a ridiculous stage. I was once talking to a lawyer, and he thinks that it's all immigration's fault. It's all immigration. You sort of wonder, why? Immigration should stop any of these people coming in to study, because really they're not studying, they're coming to steal people's husbands. This was a man. A man in a dozen. And I feel like, we had to look at when he had clients complain to him. And we just had to stare at him like, what sort of logic is this? The root of it all was the immigration officer who let these women in. You know. So I think, basically, I think that public needs to be educated.